Hey, Jim, guess what?
What?
This week we're talking about charity hands. Show me those charity hands.
Here they are.
Oh my God, magical.
Light from Lantern presents Knit a Spell. I'm Magical Maker Katie Rempe.
And I'm the maker of magic, James Devine.
Join us as we stitch together the symbiotic relationship between crafting
And the craft.
Yes.
I love this. The giving hands, the charity hands.
The giving season, really. Yes.
It really is. Yeah.
Indeed.
The gratitude hands. I talked a little bit about that on my Instagram
Yes, that's
and in my
right.
email list.
Oh, that's right. Another good opportunity. So for this week, with it being December and everything, you and I were talking about ways to give that kind of scoot around the supply chain breakdowns and as a
Right.
way to support local businesses, which I thought was a
Yeah.
perfect opportunity for some content here on an episode of Knit a Spell.
Right. I mean, I hope people are aware. It's been in the news. There's so much going on around the global supply chain is completely clogged up with the pandemic and other unsustainable practices that have just had everything is a mess. And the place where the supply chain does not break down is where, it isn't, where it is sustainable is when you are doing things that are local and that are networked and that are not based on something that is ordered from overseas and it is based on a huge global, I have to order something from somewhere far away, right?
Right. Many hands to make it.
Yeah. Anyway, there's lots of reasons around that people can research. But what is really interesting is there is enough supply from people around you. And there's also other ways of giving that we haven't talked about. So what I think is really exciting about this episode, we are going to talk about ways of giving that are outside of what we normally think about at the holiday season. Probably, though, a lot of our listeners are going to totally jive with a lot of these ideas.
I think so.
But I think that this is something for all of us to be reminded of, because as you and I were planning this episode, I think both of us inspired each other. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. I didn't think about that.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, again, I think we will be surprised by each other's answers. And then I think our listeners also will likely have some good feedback as well based on what we're going to say. So
Yes.
Let's jump right in with the idea of charity hands. Now, what does this idea of charity hands mean to you, Jim?
So I think the idea of charity, I mean, it gets a bad rap sometimes because I think people can take advantage of, charity or a handout. I think we have this thing in America, especially this brutal American individualism that is so destructive that, we don't want a handout, or we think that charity is, abused or is somehow,
You should be ashamed of it.
right, associated with shame. But this is the idea that if we could create a society where we had a better help and better, generosity in our society and more access to the amazing and immense wealth and abundance that was available everywhere, that charity wouldn't be just something that tapped the few, and that it would be a little bit from everybody. And it's this idea that is often there, like the many hands make for like light work idea. That, I'm going to probably reference this a lot in this episode, but I used to work in oncology in a large medical center. And I worked a lot with patients and even with friends. And so I had a lot of experience when someone has cancer. There's this tendency for people to just sort of be individualists and say, we're going to just get through it. And I have my spouse with me and they're going to take care of me. And I'm like, okay, first of all, cancer is bigger than just two people. And I highly recommend, although you can probably muscle through, I highly recommend activating your community. If you have 12 people, or everyone has probably 30 acquaintances in their physical community, that means that you would only have to make like a casserole or a pot of stew once a month, and that family would be fed for an entire month.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing to think about. Like, you could certainly make one lasagna or one pot of stew or one thing of chili, or you know what I mean?
That one thing that your mom made, or like that fallback into comfort through food.
Yeah, it's not a lot to ask, not a heavy lift, but we don't think in those terms, right? And so I think of that. I think, like, when we think of charity, we think, oh God, I'm going to be tapped out by helping someone.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, what comes up for you when you think of charity or charity hands?
Well, being a maker/knitter, for me, I think of like literal making for a cause with your hands. So for me, a couple of things that came up were like Knitted Knockers Association, which is a wonderful organization that is for women with mastectomies to knit prosthetic breast for them. It was developed by a woman, Barb, who went through this herself and found that, the implants are super expensive, really uncomfortable, heavy, like made of plastics and things that are not good for you. And when you have like such a fresh, surgical part of your body, the last thing you want is something heavy, uncomfortable on you.
Right.
And you can't even wear it for a long period of time. And so this is a period where a lot of women are very self-conscious in a time where they're already like, in a state. So having a knitted breast that is, in a cotton that's, made with love, that can be made your size, that's lightweight, washable, is really, really empowering, and has become such a big organization that they now have local branches all over the world. It's really, really incredible and a great way to give back.
It's an amazing idea to have like different access to different types of prostheses for people and I love that it can just be made from the community, right?
Yes, exactly. And they're
very inexpensive.
Yes.
Breast prosthetics are super expensive, right? And yeah, to have people just be able to knit them, way cool. Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, people who can make them can obtain materials for free through this organization or through their local Knitted Knockers organization. A lot of people will donate money or yarn to that local branch and then give it to the maker so that they can, like I said, offer their skill, even if they don't have the funds to do it, to help someone else. And it's also important to know that, like, each branch is probably going to have different needs. So by connecting with that branch, you can find out like, oh, okay, quite often it's larger sizes that are, in a higher demand, or remembering that like a natural color as opposed to something decorative might be a little bit more comfortable for someone to wear. So, but you never know. There's always people with different tastes. So it's nice to just get in touch to see what is needed.
Right. At the cancer center I worked at, there was a Knit for Life group that would meet multiple times a week, and they would just be downstairs knitting and chatting. And often they would be knitting stocking caps. Those stocking caps were free giveaways in the patient resource center, so that a cancer patient never had to go without a beanie or a stocking cap on their head, because chemo often certain types of chemo cause people to lose their hair.
Right.
So you never had to be cold on a wet Seattle day.
Yeah, that's great.
So that was also another way that people can contribute, is knit, a beanie or a stocking cap, which can be done in just a few days. If you're not even a crocheted hat, you don't have to be that skilled of a knitter or crocheter to be able to do a simple project like a stocking cap.
And that's
pretty easy spiral.
Exactly. And many people don't want anything too fancy, they want it to be really functional and really comfortable, not necessarily call attention out. So
yes.
And that's another thing worth considering with the other thing that I like to keep in mind in terms of making with your hands, which is knitting and making for your local homeless, specifically hats. Again, that's another one where I find hats seem to be one of the most requested items. And yet again, in usually black. Just make it in black. That's what I'm learning. Just make it in black. Just make it in black.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
I want black. If you're going to make me something, I don't need it in some color.
But he does want it with some sparkle. That's just Jim.
Or purple.
Well, I mean,
it could be purple.
Well, right. Yeah. But typically, again, it's like a basic design, basic colors, and remember that wool actually is typically a better fiber to use in this situation, especially if it's a soft, nice wool, those are going to be soft. And remember, we talked about the magical qualities of wool in our episode a few episodes ago, talking about the Aran knit sweaters. It's naturally flame retardant. It is like odor resistant. It can absorb, a third of its weight in water before feeling wet. So it's a really great tool for someone to have who may have circumstances where they're not able to, have such reliances on things to wash or whatnot. So
yeah,
it's a stronger tool. Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful. Yeah. I think there's other ways. Think about how do we offer our services? So as magical practitioners, as a palm reader, there's this idea of how do we actually do palm reading for people? How do we help people evolve past their situation? Some of the things that I have done is provided visitation to people who are in prison. So I've done that with local people who are perhaps identify as witch or Wiccan. I'll visit them in prison, and I'm on the list there to do that. I'm also on the list to visit people in hospital if they identify as witch or Wiccan, and I've done that and even performed end of life blessings on people who are in hospice and things like that. So that has been a way to offer my services and be available to people, to chaplains in different hospitals, since I'm an ordained minister and I'm able to perform those services and have the trust of the chaplains to be able to do that. So that's a really beautiful, very deeply moving thing to be able to do. I think the prison system is probably the most challenging for me, but it's really fulfilling to do.
Yeah.
And in hospitals, I'm very comfortable, and it's really fulfilling to do that in hospice and hospitals. And the other thing is occasionally I will donate gift certificates to charities. So there's one locally here that is a fund. It's called the Healing Hearts Fund. And that's a small fund in the Pacific Northwest that helps people. They have an application process that helps people with a one-time short-term expense that's unexpected. That's not a recurring expense. Like someone's car needs a repair, or someone has an unexpected medical expense, or, things like that. So they can throw them, or a funeral expense, like someone needs cremation or something like that. Right. So these are things that they've paid for in the past. Maybe it's a few hundred to a couple $1,000s or something. And so they raise money every year to have this fund available to help people over these short-term humps that happen. And it's really a cool thing. And it's actually benefited people in my personal community in the past. So I always donate to that fund. And so I've donated several gift certificates for palm readings, and then they sell them for whatever they want to sell them for, which makes my readings accessible to the community, but it also raises money for this fund. I've also taught classes at their annual psychic fair, the Healing Heart Psychic Fair. So these are also things that people can consider as far as what does it mean to have healing hands or charity hands that are out there.
That's such a great way to give to a local organization too. You've seen, people who have been helped by it, and you contribute to the helping that they provide. That is the perfect circle of life in that situation. What a great example. Right. Yeah. So another thing I was thinking, actually, going back to the knitted knockers. So I've researched a little bit about mojo bags, and I feel like, this would be kind of like a great opportunity to put a little magic with consent and all of that things. But let's say the recipient of one of these knitted knockers is themselves a witchy type person, right? What are some ways that they could infuse magical qualities into their knitted knocker, much like a mojo bag?
Yeah. So they're probably going to be stuffed with something that is lightweight but flexible, right? So probably not batting, because that's a little too perky, right? So
Sometimes
Perhaps
it's like a wool batting, which is a little bit more substantial.
So although, it's a little tough sometimes to have something highly scented, like right under your nose all day long. I don't know how, it depends on the comfort level of the person.
Sure.
Also, chemotherapy can cause, even the late effects of chemotherapy can cause people to be very highly sensitive to scent. So most cancer centers are scent-free zones, and they advise caregivers, patients, and visitors to not wear any scent at all. Regardless of whether it's artificial or essential oil, it can be very difficult for people who have had chemotherapy to put up a scent. And so these are a couple things to know about the side effects and the late effects of treatment of cancer, is that it can really mess with your sense of smell and taste.
Okay.
So that's something to know before we go into sort of like the ideas of a mojo bag.
Sure.
Certainly there can be you can get those teeny tiny little vials of gemstones.
Oh, yeah.
So that can be something that can be put in or sewn in or somehow put in. If you had a little sachet within or a little tiny piece of fabric, you could line them up on the inside, maybe sort of like a little underwire at the bottom. It's not really an underwire, but it's a little like lineup of, maybe you want garnets to enhance beauty and maybe you want rose quartz because you want some of that self-love or that soft love, right? Maybe you want garnet to enhance, bring your mojo or your sexual sort of prowess back, because chemotherapy can really destroy your sex drive, right?
Yeah, for real. Yeah.
Some hematite to ground you right back into your body. Your body there can be a feeling like my body has betrayed me. That is a common feeling that I've noticed from people. So you can have some hematite that kind of grounds us and brings us back into our body and kind of reestablish that relationship with the body. You can bring some quartz to sort of clear and have a clearing. Yeah. And so that's something that I would maybe suggest is think about how maybe someone could incorporate crystals into their knitted knocker if they wanted to do that.
That's a great idea.
Because I know the man who knows too much about oncology.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. It's a blessing in some ways, I suppose.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. It's sort of like you're welcoming in a new object to your body. You could really put almost a little petition in there too, sort of like, hello,
that's a
welcome.
Great idea.
You're welcoming it in, it's welcoming it onto you.
Yep.
And maybe it's a little love note to yourself.
Yes, it's a great idea. It's a great idea. So you could put a little paper in there, and you could certainly put a little bit of, I would say that if you received a knocker after it was already made, you could anoint that knocker with an oil that doesn't bother you. You could open up the back and insert your own petition, insert your own things into that, knitted knocker yourself, right? To charge it. So that would be another way to do it too, is make it your own.
Gosh, I'm sure that's just, a few ideas. I'm sure people will use that to inspire us with their ideas, actually. So awesome. All right. So that was great. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about another fun topic that I'm excited to jump into. How's that?
Sounds awesome.
All right, we'll be right back. So do you have anything coming up or happening this week that the people need to know about, Jim?
Nope. Just it's the season for giving. I love the idea that people should give a pattern from Light from Lantern. Download a pattern from Ravelry, wrap it up with a beautiful skein of yarn, and that would be such a great gift under the Christmas tree or the holiday tree, or the Hanukkah menorah, or whatever holiday you're celebrating.
Log. Yes.
Not too close to the Yule log. Don't burn it. That'd be such a great. Wouldn't it be a cool gift to give? You can find all of Light from Lantern's patterns on Ravelry. You can find links to all of those at lightfromlantern.com. Or you can follow her on Instagram at Light from Lantern. Subscribe to her newsletter. Super awesome. Yes. So do that.
Well, I also know of a great gift that you can give that is never out of stock, and that is a digital gift card of a divine hand reading from one amazing James Divine. Yes.
True.
You can do this at thedivinehand.com, or you can, follow along on his Instagram, Divine Hand Gym. And if you haven't signed up for his newsletter at this point, you're missing out on all sorts of amazing mudras, helpful hints and tips to get you through the holiday season, and maybe even like a super exclusive discount on an upcoming class or course that we don't even know about yet. So don't miss out. Yeah. Awesome.
You're sweet.
Oh, you are. And we're back.
All right. What's the idea you had? Tell me. Tell me now. I've been waiting.
I knew you'd be excited. So this half is all about creating versus consuming.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
We're swapping C's.
Yes. Can we just talk about consumption? Let's just define those first.
Lay it on me. Yes.
Because how do I create without consuming? I have to go and buy the yarn. I have to go and buy the thing. I have to go and buy the paint or the canvas. There are so many times when I need to take that trip to Michael's before I can create. Or do I?
That's right.
And I think that's what I want to challenge in my own mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to challenge our listeners, right?
I mean, I'm right there with you. It's very habit forming to feel like every new project you start requires entirely new materials. But quite often, and maybe it's just me as a maker,
Totally, it's you, Katie.
I'm probably the only person that acquires more than one project's worth of stuff at a time. Oh. What?
You're talking to me too.
Are you feeling heard?
I'm feeling called out.
Oh, whoops. I'm feeling very attacked. Yeah. It turns out it's pretty easy just to go out and buy stuff, but it's a little bit harder, but also kind of more exciting just to look and see what you have, to see if you might already have things. You probably, if you're me, you already have things. There's no probably. You do.
So if you're experienced as a maker, you already have stuff to make.
Yes.
If you're experienced as a magical maker, as a magical person, you already have stuff to make because I already know what your magic room looks like. It looks a lot like mine.
There you go. Imagine that.
And there is in our home, there's a lot of there's a Venn diagram between magical folks and making folks, and it really overlaps.
Yes.
So
very close.
There is, because we put the craft in witchcraft.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
It's all the same.
A lot of times we are actually making a thing during ritual, and that's part of the crafting of our intent, right?
Yes.
So this is that there are craft supplies all over the place. Yes. So this is what I think we can work on. This is the creative constraint of
exactly
finding, can I spend the extra time to organize a little corner of my craft room, be it my craft room or my craft room, and with the intent of creating something special for that someone special.
Yeah, it is been something I've personally been doing a lot of. Like I said before, as I am a couple of makers, have a bit of a stash. And I, until recently, kept half of it in the bags that I bought it in, too. And after, I know, I see the eye roll and the face palm. I feel ya. I was not taking my own advice, telling people, why is it in the bag? You're not even going to look at it. I never touched things that were in the bag, even though there would be entire sweater quantities worth of some beautiful yarn that I was at one point really looking forward to casting out immediately. That never happened 10 years ago. So just having them there to enjoy, and then being like, oh, wait, I I should use this. Like, it's doing no good sitting there. Take it out and let it live. If not in your life, then gift it to someone else and let it live in theirs.
Just tell us about, Katie, December 18th, the full moon in Gemini.
Ah, yes. So we were talking all about how good it is. It's a season of giving, right? So December 18th is the full moon in Gemini, and it's the perfect day for humanitarian efforts and donations. Because of those energies, what you'll give out into the universe at that time will come back to you tenfold.
It's also only like 2 days away from the winter solstice, which is the classic day of gift giving. And, there's this season of this like idea of Odin walking the stranger in the winter in Northern Europe, of the stranger who walks in the snow, knocks on your house door, and you invite him in. And if you let him warm his feet and you serve him good food and you treat him as a welcome guest, well, you find out that was actually the god Odin, and he bestows great blessings and great riches and great gifts upon your household. But if you treat him as a beggar, you turn him away, or you let him in, but you leave him in the barn, or you don't treat him well, then the gifts and the blessings he bestows upon you are commiserate with how welcome you make that guest feel. And this is that sort of origin. We think that there's some origin of this idea of Santa Claus, or Sinterklaas, or the different ways that Santa is imagined.
Yeah,
where that might come from.
Whoa, very interesting. And I feel very reminiscent of other gods. I think, were we talking about the Romans, who also had this sort of similar cultural situation? Yeah, yes. Always invite them in, always feed, because they could be the gods. I kind of the love
Greeks,
that,
the ancient Greeks had a very strong, The ancient Greeks had a very strong ethic, as from what we think we know, around how to treat guests. And it showed how honorable you were. But it also, there was a code around guests not to overstay your welcome. And we inherit some of that. The Romans do that as well. Around this time, there's also the time of Saturnalia, which was a whole time of, gift giving and shopping and all that stuff. So we inherit a lot of Christmas from Saturnalia for sure. And that is a really great thing we can talk about at a future episode. But this is, big time which is coming to get ready for this whole season. I mean, this shopping season and holiday season has been going on for thousands of years. It's not new.
It's not new.
The Romans would complain that it was over commercialized also. They complained about the over shopping and the over commercialization.
Oh, so Saturnalia. It's like old news.
Remember our episode on the Celtic knotwork?
Yes.
How we learned it from the Romans, because that's kind of the seed of our culture. Rome. Daddy Rome also taught us how to do Christmas.
Great.
Doing it right.
Interesting.
Yeah. We'll find a lot of those themes. But yeah, so this is a really important thing. So I think it's interesting to talk about how magic can be donated.
Yes.
It's an interesting idea. How can magic be donated? And I think that there's one way, which is we can donate magic, like literally, like Marie Kondo, like tidy up our craft room, right?
Yeah.
Like we talked about how between my husband and I, we have like probably 4 houses worth of magical stuff, right? We're attached to all of it, so don't come asking for it, because
every priest brings us joy.
Yeah, it'll be hard to part with it. But like, what are things? We just gave away like 4 bags of clothing and stuff, and I'm like, okay, well, some of this is kind of witchy, kind of, so we gave it to other sort of witchy folks that we know, not to Goodwill, because they wouldn't appreciate it, right?
Right. Yeah.
So are there oils and candles and yarns and craft supplies and stuff like that from our magical collection? But I think we can also do magic for others. And you were asking a question about that.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, how do you do magic for like the collective, for the good of the world? It's not like it's not like I'm trying to do like a specific thing for a one person without their consent. That's not really what I'm trying to say. It's more like if I want to donate to the goodwill of the season for humanity, what's a way I could go about doing that?
Yeah, I think we can think about putting this is in the same category as living a magical lifestyle. How do I make my everyday activities magical? So if I'm going to volunteer at a soup kitchen, I can put intent into what I'm doing. So I can, just like I would pray over the soup, I can also put magical intent into what I'm doing. So as I'm peeling the potatoes, I can, what is an intent we could put into the potatoes? Right?
Oh, a potato comes from the ground. It's a root vegetable, so maybe it's a grounding opportunity there.
Yeah. Maybe the carrots could have something similar. Maybe the orange. Yeah. Maybe the orange of the carrot is a blockbusting.
Yeah. Oh, sight. Yeah.
It removes the barriers for people to see their way forward. Maybe we put a little turmeric in there for that purpose and also bring that together. Perhaps we add other things to the soup for our intention and for, the reason that it's there. And so everything we do with that soup or that stew, we do that for that purpose. And we put the intent in as we're stirring the soup. Perhaps we stir it in a clockwise manner to bring our intention for the people who are doing it. As I'm ladling the soup into the delicious and amazing soup, because I put a little saffron in there so that it brings again some of that open the roads, blockbusting, let the roads be clear for this person. And it's delicious and they love it. As I'm serving it, I'm saying in my mind, may you be blessed, may you be whole and healed, whatever you may need. And I'm avoiding very specific things based on my own judgment of them. That's one way to think about it. But if you donate something like a bike or a jacket or something, you could put intent into the thing that you're donating.
Yeah. It's not doing you any good just sitting on the shelf. So let it go and find where it needs to be to do its best good. Yeah.
Yeah. Even if you're donating one of those bags of groceries that you buy for $20 at the grocery store and it goes to the food bank.
Yeah.
Go up to that bag. And as you put it into that cart, say, may this bring prosperity to the family to all who receive it and all who distribute it.
Oh, there you go. So what do you have for suggestions for people if, not everyone who listens to the show is like a brilliant magical worker like you, Jim.
Oh, I don't know.
What are some just basic, easy spells if somebody wanted to donate their time to helping the collective? What's something someone could do in a mantra or an affirmation or something like that, or a prayer that could heal sort of just the energy if you can't do something physically?
If you can't do something physically, I think first work on yourself. I think that's the first thing to do, is start within. When we change ourselves, we start to change. That's where the world starts to change, is when we change ourselves. So we first do the spell here and say, am I healed? Am I well? We heal thyself. Like caregiver needs, we need to be whole and complete. Charity begins at home.
Yeah. You can't fill from an empty cup.
Correct.
Yeah.
Making sure that I have what I need, and being able to then share that wealth and abundance and prosperity in the way that's right for me. So I think that's first.
Yeah.
And being able to do that with perfect intent, I think that's where that really can come into play in a way that's helpful.
Oh, yeah.
I think that
great.
Sometimes people feel obligated at this time of year and perhaps sometimes give either from a sense of guilt or obligation or shame. And then they end up feeling bad about it later or overtaxed.
Yes.
And I think there's a way to have charity not have a negative connotation and be able to have charity be a source of joy. So that's what I'm hoping that people can start with. So that's one thing that I think. But what do you? What's your answer to that question?
I think you had a brilliant answer. I mean, if you are the example that you want to see in the world, then you're inspiring people, you know, even if it's not like, oh, I want to be exactly like that person. It's more like, oh, I want to live in the same energy that that person's emitting, you know, like that kind of attitude, that sort of thing. And another thing you said was, you know, not overburdening yourself. And as a maker, that's like number one, you know, especially when you first start knitting or something like that. All you want to do is make something huge for every member of your family. But then you remember like, oh shit, there's like 20 plus people in my family. And I told them I'd make them all scarves or hats or something crazy. And now it's like, I have a week out and I still have 30 of the projects left or whatever. And how am I going to do it? And now you're freaking out and you're sad that like they're going to be disappointed and they are going to be disappointed maybe because they didn't get the thing. And so knowing your limits, again, so that you can offer your best self and you're not just making like 30 hats that are filled with stress and obligation, that's really powerful too.
Not overburdening yourself is huge. It's huge. And this is vacation time. This is time of rest. Like, what are we doing? We are on vacation, overburdening ourselves with commitment to make a huge dinner, host a huge thing, show up to a huge thing, put up with all of this family. I mean, I hope that there's people listening who are like, thank God I'm not doing all that. There's people who are like, I have to sit next to Uncle Fred and his family who have like the opposite beliefs that I do, who are just going to be super stressed. Right. Yes. And like, that's going to stress me out for like the 3 days before and the 3 days after. And we never give ourselves ample time. We never give ourselves ample time to actually rest, digest, and recover from our commitments during the holidays.
Yeah.
And this is a big thing that I think is worth sort of having charity around. Having charity and compassion for people who have a difference of opinion, who are in our family, having charity and compassion for ourselves, saying, I can spend 2 hours with the folks or with the family that I don't get along with. I'm going to prioritize being on vacation, not having to go to work, having that time off, being out in nature, just being with myself, being with the people who I really enjoy, going to my Friendsgiving.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
I think these are things to also really consider is having Friendsgiving. It's past Thanksgiving. I'm just still in Thanksgiving mode since it was just last week.
I get it. It's time.
Having your friends' Christmas, your friends' holiday, your Christmas and your holiday and your New Year's and all that, which is really focused around the people that you are actively and consciously choosing to be around. And, you know, sometimes we think it's just easier to like succumb to the pressure of family. And I think that's another way to be charitable, is understanding that charity sometimes is an obligation and we have to sort of manage that. And managing that takes a whole lot of effort. So
yes. And knowing your boundaries, which is part of knowing yourself.
So that's probably a whole nother episode.
Oh gosh. Well, we have a whole month to talk about it. So maybe we'll swing back around. Well, so how about we close the episode with a little oracle draw, huh? What do you think?
Let's do it.
Oh, all right. So we're going back in. Whoops, that's just me dropping everything. The Stitcher's Oracle deck. Da-da-dow. Return.
I love that deck so much.
Me too. I'm excited to have her on as a future guest, the designer. She also does yarn, which I didn't realize. So that's my bad for taking so long to realize that she had like a whole other company full of stuff I didn't realize. I know. So my bad. Stitch Together Studio is the maker. You can find her on Instagram.
Following now. Stitch Together Studio. I can't believe I wasn't following her already.
I know. Just wait. There's so much good yarn and amazing little things. Oh, I had a little like planchette stitch guy or a stitch gauger. Oh, so cute. Anyway. All right. So.
Oh, I am following her. Yes.
So much goodness. You didn't even know.
Kiana Nelson.
That's the one.
Oh my gosh, this yarn.
Right? I know.
This is why yarn stuff shows up in my feed, because I'm following her and you and a bunch of other people.
Sorry.
All right. What are we doing?
So our card this week is this guy here. Oh, here we go. So it is a crochet hook with yarn. Like maybe it's starting a project. Perhaps it's finishing a project.
This is that first, I forget what they're called in crochet. What's it called?
Like the first chain?
Yeah, like that
stitch?
first stitch in crochet. But it's got that plant in there. Has me think about like, what are we starting?
It's a new beginning of maybe a charitable project, especially with what we've been talking about this week. And it does seem like the leaves in here are almost like it sort of reminds me of like, you know, the eagle holding the
laurel.
Yeah, exactly, on the one side, which I guess also would kind of be seasonally appropriate, right?
Yeah.
So maybe this is a good time to start a charitable project, whether it's an actual making or magical making or just giving your time. This could be.
Or a laurel is also like well recognized. I think those frayed edges are also sitting there. And so you could also say, this is your, like, remember that you've also done a lot. And you have laurels in that loop.
They were probably gained by having a little of this fray situation happen, I have to imagine.
So perhaps that's also something. So you don't have to make it. You could also give a gift.
Well, if anyone else, as always, has reflections on our card for this week, feel free to reach out to us on Instagram at Knitaspell or knitaspellpodcast@gmail.com.
Well, I just love all of our listeners. Our listenership is growing. And if you've enjoyed listening, we enjoy having you check in with us. So thank you for hanging out.
See you guys. Bye, Jim.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, everybody. And don't forget, new episodes of Knitaspell are conjured every Wednesday. Learn more at knitaspell.com and follow our Instagram page at Knitaspell. If you have a quick second to support the show, feel free to drop us a review on iTunes or share this with a friend. Jim and I appreciate your support and look forward to seeing you next week.